Today, as I record this, the U.S. is observing the Transgender Day of Remembrance. On this day, we mourn the flames snuffed out this past year of trans people lost to violence. This day is a reminder that trans people are uniquely vulnerable, with active hate campaigns against us, millions in spending pushing people to violence, and not only a total lack of federal protections, but laws on the books in many states carving out exceptions from normal criminal charges for people who kill us, as long as they do it primarily because we're trans. But we aren't defined by our suffering. Being trans is a radical act of embracing joy in defiance of anyone who tries to tell others who they must be and how they must live. Trans Day of Remembrance is a day of sorrow, yes, but also a reminder to celebrate the people who are still here while they're still here and to fight for life. Nothing makes this point clearer than the story of the person who inspired the first Trans Day of Remembrance 25 years ago, Rita Hester. Rita was born November 30th, 1963, and was killed 2 days shy of her 35th birthday in 1998. She was murdered in her apartment near Boston, and her killer has never been identified. The way her death was mishandled by the media, how the murderers of gay men were making national news while the murders of trans people were being largely ignored, how even the GSM community at the time had forgotten the name of another trans woman, Chanel Pickett, killed just 3 years prior, despite her killer recently escaping justice on a trans panic defense. All of that made advocate Gwendolyn Ann Smith realize we were losing our own history. On the first anniversary of Rita's death, she and Penny Ash Matz organized the first Day of Remembrance, November 28th, 1999. Gwendolyn also began a project called Remembering Our Dead, now accessible only through the Wayback Machine, which attempted to catalog the names of all the murdered trans people as far back as 1970. The names you see scrolling past now are the confirmed dead from that lost register's last index in 2012. Today, that list would be over 5,000 names long, and that only a fraction of the worldwide total from the relatively small number of countries that report data on killings of trans people, with roughly 350 added every year. But just as important as what happened following her death was the life that came before. Rita, depicted in this Boston mural, was a remarkable woman. According to her little sister, Rita didn't have a coming out. She always was indomitably a girl. Her personality and mannerisms made it obvious to anyone, and at a very young age, she was naturally accepted as herself. As she grew up, however, her hometown became less friendly toward a black trans woman. In her teen years, she discovered the rock scene in Boston, where it didn't matter that she was trans, and she made the journey often. By her mid-20s, she'd moved there. Jessica Piper, a friend of Rita's, observed that Rita was unique, describing her as the only link between the queer underground and the straight world. Even though she was warned by older black trans community members about the dangers of mingling with the cishet folks, Rita went from a fixture at rock shows to a performer and often a dancer for other performers. That wasn't just around town either, but international trips as well. She wasn't just a rocker, of course. Her best friend, a white cis woman named Brenda Wynn, said the two would cook together and talk often. Rita spent Thanksgiving with Brenda's family in 1998, 2 days before her death. Rita was well known and well loved, not just in the trans community of Boston. Following her death, a vigil was held that was attended by hundreds and brought national attention to the epidemic of violence against trans people. Charito Suarez, another GSM community leader in the Boston area, knew Rita for 8 years and described her as a magnetic personality. For an interview on the 10th anniversary, she said, quote, "She was a shining star. Whenever she arrived at a club, her presence would be noticed by anyone. She was so elegant and so beautiful, and part of her beauty was that she never tried to make anyone else look less. Rita was a force of nature, a brute fact, a woman who made her presence known but added to the joy in any room rather than dominate it. Her loss diminished everyone's lives." Another area trans person who knew Rita, Gunnar Scott, helped organize protests of the local media who treated Rita's murder and memory so poorly, including the local GSM paper. On December 3rd, they marched on the offices of the Herald and Bay Windows with signs reading, "Your silence will not protect you." People were heartbroken, but also outraged. And those things, in that season of escalating violence against all gender and sexual minority people, gave rise to a movement. So remember Rita Hester, but not just that she died for being trans. Remember that she lived and that she was very much loved.